vitamin E is a century old, first discovered by two pediatricians in UC Berkeley, and then they found out that it helped to prevent, it helped bring the fetus to full term. Contrarian to our understanding, it did not become a vitamin E because that is antioxidant property. It does, but it became a vitamin E because it helped the fetus to full term. It's a birth vitamin like that. But antioxidant is known soon after. If you fast forward to the last 20 years, most of the research done by Tocotrienol is on cardiovascular, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and cancer. These are chronic conditions like that. And we decided to go on to study most of it. And I'm kind of crazy, you know. I will never get the bottle to say it's anti-cancer. Never. But we have 8 clinical trials in Denmark paid by the Danish government to study the cancer. I'm not presenting any cancer study here, just not enough time. But you can ask me when you come to the booth. But we will do the other chronic condition. Briefly, the structure. Most people know the vitamin E look like on the left, tocopherol. And the tocotrienol is on the right. If you look carefully like that, the red color thing, the tail, see that? On the tocopherol, the tail of the tocopherol is completely saturated. If you look carefully on the tocotrienol, it's got 3 double bond, and hence triene, 3 double bond. That's it. That's the only difference between the tocopherol and tocotrienol. And there are 8 isomers, 8 possible isomers. And if you look at the literature, the 2 most active vitamin E are delta tocotrienol and gamma tocotrienol are highlighted in the bottom right, like that. You see them. If you go back and you Google delta tocotrienol or gamma tocotrienol, there will be hundreds of these studies, and most of them were not done by us. It would be amazing if we do not consider supplementing this for our health. Now, so delta tocotrienol like a sore thumb sticking out, and gamma close by on the second. And the next slide I show you, you'll be stunned. This is how the plant makes it. See the diagram on the left-hand side. There is no tocopherol. If the tocopherol will be there, it will be somewhere in the early 2-3 minutes here. It will show up. So the first small peak is gamma tocotrienol. The second peak is sore thumb sticking out delta tocotrienol. In other words, if this is not a plant, this annatto tocotrienol would be a drug. I don't dare to make this any more concentrated because the last person I want to attract is the FDA knocking on the door. So I make it as concentrated as I possibly can and not anymore because it will become a drug. This is plant-based. It's a physical process. My wife told me that you're given this by God to find out this. Please do not use chemical and solvent. We only use physical method. And this is made in the United States. I'm an immigrant, and I'm proud to do this. If you ever come to visit me in Massachusetts, we make it right here in Massachusetts. So, great. Now, of the 3 sources I've discovered, rice, palm, and annatto on the tocotrienol. Tocopherol you can find anywhere. If you look carefully, the teal color of rice and palm, about 25 to 50% of those rice from palm and rice source, they are tocopherol. If you look at the tocotrienol, the maroon color, all of it is delta and gamma exactly as a curve like that. Why do I take time to show this? It's because we found, after 10 years of arduous work, that the tocopherol interferes with the function of tocotrienol. Now, normally you wouldn't expect that. You would expect that one drug is allopathic, and nature will produce a mixture, and the mixture is good, so it's synergistic. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But you know, if you accept the premise that things are synergistic in nature, you cannot just write off in your brain and say that, well, things in nature cannot be antagonistic. I don't think that is okay to say. If you eat digitalis, you're going to die, you know. So things that are from plant can be toxic as well, but we found out that alpha tocopherol interferes with the function of tocotrienol. I wrote them on the left-hand side, so in the bottom I said alpha tocopherol put brakes on tocotrienol function, and on the right, on tocopherol, it does this. So you can read faster than me rather than me repeating. If any of you are interested, I'll send you some literature. If you ask me simply, why is alpha tocopherol taken in huge amount, no good like that. First, it should be intuitive. Plant does not make a lot of alpha tocopherol. Plant makes a lot of gamma tocopherol. If you go online, you see this. They make gamma tocopherol to protect the oil in their plant not to go rancid, like soybean. I know people think soybean has protein. Yes, it does. We have soy oil, right? So they don't want the soy oil to get rancid. They make gamma tocopherol. And why does annatto only make tocotrienol? Because the keratin in it is the most oxidizable of anything. So they have to make the most potent vitamin E to protect the annatto. That's the reason. I just got lucky to have discovered it from the plant. Otherwise, so I've said enough of this. So this is a brief recap. And the bottom two you can see from what they have. So now I'm going to go to the various study. It is a journey over the last 20 years, and a lot of things we didn't know at the beginning. So we studied inflammation, lipid oxidation, arteriosclerosis. So initially we did ant rabbit study. This is a journey. We actually did a lot of this study. If I were to be on your side, did you do this? Did you do this? Good question to ask. But on my side, if I were to do something, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to do a study, besides the cost. But we actually systematically study this. So we use rabbit in this study, the translated doses there. And we noticed that it worked on cholesterol. So good. And it gave me some understanding of the dosage. I want to give this as a picture that sometimes we forget. It's very simplistic. We have about 30,000 miles. It's from LA to New York about 10 times. And these are delivering the nutrients to the 38 trillion cells in the body. 38 trillion is about 5,000 times the population of the earth. This one, I wanted to think of a cell. It has cell wall. And it's a gated community. Think of it as a gated community. The nutrient comes in and the waste goes out. And there are probably about 2,000-3,000 antioxidant that people talk about that, even for the phytonutrient. I usually like to cut the chase because the word antioxidant is kind of like overused. I care that it is a lipid antioxidant. Why? We have protein, we have carbohydrate, we have nucleic acid, and then we have fat. Of these 4 main groups in a human body, the easiest to get oxidized to go bad would be fat. If you don't believe me, you have a stick of butter on a hot summer day out. Go back in 2 hours and smell the butter. Or like that. Even if you drive past a roadkill, that smell is not oxidized protein. It's oxidized fat first. So fat is the lowest fruit of things going bad. Now you go back to the 38 trillion cells. 80% of the membrane is fat. So now what are the antioxidants that would protect it? In the 1980s, there was a famous Austrian professor. He decided to answer that question. He extracted it out from the cell membrane and figured out all the antioxidant in the cell membrane. Not all the antioxidant the nutritional supplement company tells you. All the antioxidant in the cell membrane. And more than 90% of those antioxidants are vitamin E molecule. And the remaining 10% are CoQ10 that the body makes. It stays right there like that. So therefore, protecting that to maintain the cell membrane so that the gated community will work good is at the very rudimentary level. I can present that to you like that. And I can only know of 3 chemicals that look like these. Resveratrol doesn't fit like that. Curcumin doesn't fit like that. Quercetin doesn't fit like that because they have OH group everywhere. They don't stick into the cell membrane. What do? I can only think of 3. Vitamin E, as in tocotrienol, manoquinone 4, MK4, and CoQ10. And what do they look like? They look like a sperm. They have a head, and then they have a saturated tail. And the saturated tail, it sticks into the cell membrane. It is not complicated. So there are other antioxidants like vitamin C, like this, but they don't stay in the cell membrane. They're in other domains, so like that. So that's this part that I mentioned. We don't know how to do study on removing arteriosclerosis, so this is the only study we have. We've done many animal studies, so we found that tocotrienol have anti-Velcro effect. I just said it like that. We don't want anything to stick onto the artery. If it sticks onto the artery, it's the beginning of arteriosclerosis, whether it's calcium or whether it's plaque or whatever it is. So if you look at this, the inflammation drop, the adhesion molecule drop, and the proteolytic enzyme that would destabilize the plaque drop. And you can see the bottom one, alpha tocopherol didn't work compared to control, and the tocotrienol does, and the translated dose you can see there. Finally, we get to do clinical study, and from here most of them are clinical study. This I can draw three things. This is an arduous amount of work. The dose escalation, 125, 250, 500, 750. This is at the time we didn't know any better. So we have to do this to find out the active dose. So by looking at the active dose, it looked like the 250 and 500 work just fine. For the cholesterol piece, the 250 would work fine. For the inflammation piece, could be 500. Note that's first thing. So we've mapped that out. We also asked the researcher to say half the people that have high cholesterol have heart condition, but the other half is inflammation. Can you please make some inflammation marker? And he did. You see the inflammation also dropped. But that's the third point we picked up from this a long study. Notice that after 500 milligram it dropped and 750 it dropped. The first suggestion, the more you give, the worse you get. And I want to let you know, at the time we did not know how high the dosage ought to be. We gave people a slug, one at a time, not BID, just one dose, 125, 250, 500, 750. We didn't know. Now we found out that much beyond 250, the body cannot handle on its absorption. You follow? So at the 500 dose, it dropped, and it's not because it's toxic or anything like that. So therefore, in the study now that we have 600 milligram, we have it BID. If it's 900 milligram like cancer study, TID. It cannot be given one big dose because they can't absorb it. So this study have those three derivatives. And this is a reduction of that study. So pretty much the same. I move on. So now, on this NAFLD thing, all of us have seen this in various formats. It is a cluster of metabolic syndrome. It's the kind blood pressure is moderately high, triglyceride moderately high, and the LDL reduced, the circumference of the waist, and fasting glucose increase. We kind of know this. But interestingly, in metabolic syndrome, the LDL is not usually high. The HDL is always depressed. I have been a member of the American Diabetes Association for 35 years. It's a long, long time. So I sit and listen to endocrinologists all the time, and they say this cluster. Remember, this was called Syndrome X. And Gerald Reaven from Stanford, he figured it out, and then it became metabolic syndrome. So we did a lot of this study. But somewhere I had to bite the bullet, because if I explain to patient, I'm not a practitioner, you explain to patient, it's hard for them to handle something like this because it is metabolite. But they can handle it, say, your liver has a problem, your heart has a problem. Then somewhere in the mix of this, I thought, wait a minute, a metabolic syndrome is a cluster of this. What would be a manifestation of an organ that has metabolic syndrome? Non-alcohol fatty liver disease. I decided to go hard after that. 5 years of my life, I did that. I did a 3-month study, finished, published, 6-month study, finished, published, and 12-month study. When you add it together, you can do it in 2 years. It's not like that. By the time you recruit, and then this, and then COVID, this and that, the whole thing is 5 years long. It's finished. I am proud to present that data to you in the next few slides. You'll see. It is so obvious, it will be shocking to me if you would not do this for your patient. I know, that sounds brazen statement I just made, but if it wouldn't, it would be shocking to me. Right? Even before we did that, we did healthy human that are elderly. And then on this, the C-reactive protein drop, the total antioxidant drop, this should be good. But when we did that, we didn't know any better. So I have a combo of Tocotrienol, Quercetin, Resveratrol. I didn't really know exactly what I'm doing, but they're healthy people. So it looked like generally this kind of compound are good. So having known this, now we begin to frame in. This is the context. Globally, 20-30% people have NAFLD. In the US, it's about 90 million, 30%. If people were to have on the list of a liver transplant, we will never have enough liver like that. Just think of this, who would have guessed 30, 40 years ago, people would eat food and would have the problem like alcohol cirrhosis. Nobody would have guessed it. Enough that they call this such an awkward phrase, non-alcohol fatty liver disease. So like that. So you don't have to get fixated on this table, which is busy, but I have a few graphical slides that follow this. I put this thing here to show if I were to be a patient, even if I don't talk to a doctor, the first three things that would drop would be good enough indication for me. And if I were to be a health professional doctor, I would measure the middle section. It's easy to do because it's blood work. And if I were to be a specialist, I would look at the bottom half like that. The reason we did the 12-month study was we not only want the health professional and doctors to buy in on it, we want the specialists to buy in on it. That's a harder sell. So the only thing short of us doing is the biopsies, because the IRB, Institutional Review Board, would not allow us to do this. So we would do CAT scan to measure it so that the specialists would buy in on it. So let me now summarize these three in a few graphical diagrams. If you look at the 3, 6, 9, we didn't have a 9-month study. At 12 months, you can see the BMI, the waist circumference, and the weight drop. I don't think that this is intrinsically a weight loss product. The metabolites are so out of kilter. So when the metabolite come back kilter, the weight responded by reducing. So we didn't see any weight loss in the first month because the shortest time we have is 3 months, and most weight loss products are 2 to 4 weeks. This is not 2 to 4 weeks. But however, the weight loss is sustained over the entire 12 months. So that's an encouraging sign because the managing of the metabolite was sustained over the 12 months. So this piece, the second one. A health professional will probably measure this marker. You can see it systematically dropped. Remember, this is not a study where we follow 3 months, then 6 months, then 12 months. This is an independent 3-month study finished, an independent 6-month study finished, an independent 12-month study finished. So this is even better than a continuum study like that, And look at that inflammation drop. I was stunned by seeing this neat thing. The next one. The specialists would want to buy in. They need to know if the fat will get out of the liver, steatosis. They need to know if the fat would damage the liver and have fibrosis and scarring tissue. That one dropped. We also measure apoptosis. When the fat is too high in the liver cell dies. And so and then we're able to map that out. And then the HOMA IR, because endocrinologists like diabetes doctor, they wanted to see not only your sugar drop, they wanted to see your insulin would also respond. So the equation for the sugar drop and the insulin response is a HOMA IR. So that's the insulin resistance. That also measure. It's as sweet as I can present it to you here. And then this doctor that did this work, he was a little bit nuts, but he really wanted to do it. He wanted to measure if there is any responsible microRNA that explain this. So in this 12-month study, we also gave people a separate group alpha tocopherol, even though I lamented not to take alpha tocopherol. Why did I do that? About 15 years ago, alpha tocopherol was used to mitigate NAFLD. So I have enough doctors asking me, how does your tocotrienol compare with alpha tocopherol group? So this is the comparison, alpha tocopherol group. For most other markers, they were similar, but in inflammation and apoptosis, that the delta tocotrienol is about 20% better than the alpha tocopherol in terms of reducing inflammation and apoptosis and mitigating the microRNA of the. Finding the microRNA to drop when a body produces so much is like finding a pin in a haystack. And these pins were found in this haystack that the tocotrienol would drop. It's probably as good as it can be in terms of fatty liver that I can imagine, other than having biopsies, which the IRB wouldn't allow us to do, for the study. So now moving on. So we've done, convince you on the fatty liver side. What about other ones? So we have this study, 300 milligram on people with pre-diabetes. A 3-month study, you can see those numbers, it drops. So it's good. So then quickly the next one. The study embody a lot more. I just give you a summary. This one here, the researcher was fastidious. They said they have enough information resveratrol would work. So they did a study on metabolic syndrome to measure central obesity and inflammation, but they have delta tocotrienol and resveratrol. Every time I say delta tocotrienol, it's just from the annatto, like that. And the resveratrol we don't make. But he felt that the resveratrol would work, so this is it. So if you have patient, have metabolic syndrome, not yet have diabetes, you can see the data there. The primary and secondary endpoint. The weight drop also in this group. So it's good. You can ask me, I can tell you what companies, I'm not supposed to on stage tell people who make those products. We only make large amount. Other companies make product for health professional give to the patient. So we are committed to do the clinical studies behind. So this is the type 2 diabetes. So we went after this. So the 250 and 500 milligram. Notice the 500 milligram, when they are already frank diabetic, the 500 milligram adds some, but not so much more than the 250. So if they're already diabetic, it did not add so much more, even at the 500 milligram, just from the numbers that I have. So this is a summary of all of those. And in the bottom, you can see for a healthy individual, 100 to 300 milligram oxidative protection because of the fat in your body will be good enough. If you have mild chronic condition, 300 to 400 milligram. Advanced chronic condition, then 400 to 600 milligram. Only in our cancer patients, we use 900 milligram. And the highest single dose is 300 milligram, and then you divide them after that.